find amongst my mass of open windows the slides. So let's see. That looks clear to people? Can you see my slides?
Not yet.
No, there?
No. No, it's fine. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Super. Well, thank you again, Pierre. Fantastic day. It's been really great to listen to so much good research. And I'm going to present mine. Obviously, this is, you can see, 5th SES conference. And in case you're wondering where we are, I'm in my son's bedroom. And this is work presented. I'm presenting its work with Carl Singleton, who I hope is on the call, and Dominik Schreyer. I'm not sure if he is, but either way, hopefully one of them is here for all those difficult questions that you've got. But the title is Echoes, What Happens When Football is Played Behind Closed Doors? So quite topical, you might say. We'll come to that in a second. As we're probably well aware, spectators play a fundamental role in sport. The individual experience, of course, of going to any kind of sporting event is a huge part of that output, and all sports teams around the world try and exploit that in the way in which they present. That experience of going to a game, whatever kind of game it might be. And even also, crowds can influence outcomes on the field as well. We believe, at least fans believe that. There's research as well, which I'll come to in a moment. So therefore, what happens if there are no spectators present? I think different. We imagine they must be, because footballers, in the particular case that we're looking at, they are playing on a field with lots of people around, and either they are very influenced by that, or they're not. And so what we're going to look at, or what we're going to also try and think about, is that we can identify particular actors that are responsible for particular effects. So this is something that we did, and of course it's become quite topical, as you can probably well imagine. Here's a socially distanced celebration recently by Borussia Dortmund after scoring a goal. And as we know, the Bundesliga has returned, and the second Bundesliga has returned behind closed doors in recent weeks after the coronavirus outbreak. It's topical here in England. There's been an announcement now that the Premier League will return, but as I understand, it's still not clear whether or not neutral stadiums will be used, because in advance of the Bundesliga returning, there was a big discussion. And this here, I'm giving you Daily Mail, one of our perhaps finest establishments, perhaps not, talking about the discussions taking place with Premier League clubs about how football would return. And the teams at the bottom were particularly concerned that if games were played in neutral venues, they would lose home advantage. So you see at the bottom, an article says, much of the opposition to neutral stadiums has come from sides at risk of relegation, as it's feared removing home advantage could have a devastating impact on their running. For what it's worth, we did all of this research before the Bundesliga returned, and so we like to now think we're a little bit prescient in the sense that we figured in advance that there's a reasonable chance that home advantage may well be reduced as a result of playing games behind closed doors, and I'll come to that in a little while. But here's a conversation article that we wrote, as you can see from the date, just before the Bundesliga returned. And this is a plot that I put together earlier on, because we've collected data since the Bundesliga returned, and you may or may not be aware that there's also footballers returned in the Faroe Islands, in Estonia and the Czech Republic, amongst other places, Hungary and Poland as well, I understand. And these are outcomes of matches by month, so no other kind of filtering of matches at all, just all matches taking place and outcomes by month. So the black line is outcomes, is home wins, so proportion of home wins. It's kind of about what we'd expect, somewhere between 40 and 50%. But then since the return, this is the May 2020 observation, you see it's down below 30%. It's even lower if you look at just the Bundesliga, but if you factor in a few other of these leagues, it's still significant drop-off from where it was beforehand. So back to what we're looking at. Where are we nesting ourselves? Well, we're nesting ourselves within a literature. People have looked at have looked at these closed-door matches, football matches in particular, played without spectators. Obviously, there will be other sporting events now taking place without spectators as well. But there's certainly a history of football matches taking place without spectators or behind closed doors, as the jargon goes. And Pedersen, Lidbom and Trix in 2010 looked at some games in the Serie A in 2007, which were played behind closed doors, and they found there was a reduced difference between teams in red and yellow cards. And in terms of other aspects of the literature, I suspect many of us are very familiar with this. Many of us may well have carried out research, and I've probably failed to cite reference a number of you here. But of course, we're all quite interested in the outcomes of football matches. Home advantage has really become the discussion point since the Bundesliga return, just because it seems to have completely reversed. And on that, there are all sorts of studies. And the contention really is how crowds influence home advantage. Is it because they somehow influence the players in some way, or is it because they influence the referees? And of course, ideally, we'd be able to, in looking at outcomes from football matches, be able to separate these effects. In reality, of course, lots of the kinds of classic statistics that we look at in football matches, well, they could be influenced by the referee, could be influenced by the players, could be influenced by the coach decisions, all sorts of different decisions that are taking place in the different contexts when we're looking at matches now behind closed doors. What do we take? Well, we take data from a website, worldfootball.net. We take data for the Big Five leagues, England, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain, and also lower leagues and cup matches in Italy. We also take European competitions, the Champions League and the Europa League, plus those qualification matches to try and look at how many games there have been over the years behind closed doors. I've taken away, there we go. No, I haven't taken away, thankfully. We've got an N there, which is the number of matches behind closed doors, 161 since about 2013. That's quite a small number, as you can see. That's 161 out of 34,000 matches. So quite a small treatment group, if you like. And so we're quite delighted, obviously, with football returning behind closed doors, since that's going to give us a significantly greater number of matches. We've already had a good 60 or 70 matches behind closed doors since the return of football. And so this is just the descriptive statistics. When we run our models, so just to skip on, we're thinking about various different outcomes, and we're thinking about controlling for the team strengths. We're using ELO ratings to do so. We're thinking about controlling for attendance, and obviously as well inserting if a match was a closed-door match without spectators. The outcomes that we're thinking about so far, we've looked at results, the outcomes of matches. We looked at goals as well. We looked at cards awarded, fouls committed, and penalties, stuff associated with penalties, also shots on and off target, and also we've looked a little bit at the amount of injury time added to matches. Sorry, my kids are currently entering their own bedroom, and so therefore they're interrupting my talk. She needs to find her book. I'll try and carry on without being too disturbed by my daughter in the room. We add in various fixed effects for robustness as well. So we add in the home team fixed effects, away team, in appropriate places, referee fixed effects, season fixed effects, and so on. Just to give another sense of where these games fitted before 2019-20, this is before the closure due to coronavirus. There are already quite a few matches in the current season before the closure. The other matches were spread fairly thinly across the years, apart from this 2006-07 episode in Serie A. So in terms of a graphical representation of the results, these are simple differences in means. We then, I'll show you the tables in a moment, we then control, in these cases, for team strengths. And perhaps the one that stands out maybe is first of all, the home win percentage, which falls from about 45% to about 35%. This is pre the return of the Bundesliga. We see that we've got home goals falling significantly, so we've got the mean difference in mean plus the confidence bands. And that seems to be where the effect is. It's fewer home goals. There's ever so slight increase in away goals, but not particularly much. The most significant result, and the result that we found, if we've tried to throw everything at it and see if we can get rid of it in the way that you do with robustness checks, is the effect on away yellow cards. And here you see it's about 0.38. It's somewhere in the region of 0.4 to 0.5, so almost half a yellow card less for away players. Almost no effect on home players, no real effect of red cards. And then what else do we find over on the right-hand side here? We've got an effect, interestingly, on shots on target saved. So just slightly significant for both home and away shots on target saved. That's arguably an effect that we can identify with players rather than referees or coaches necessarily. And then just in terms of summarising the results, this is information on injury time. We don't really have enough observations on this. We collected our data for this from the ESPN website. We don't really have enough information. There are fewer matches. And so there's indicative evidence that there's some effect on injury time, or at least the absence of the conventional effect that we've seen by previous authors finding that referees have more injury time for home teams that are losing when there are more fans in the stadium. But that's quite a weak effect because, well, we don't have a huge number of observations of these closed-door matches, particularly with the ESPN data set. It goes down to about 77 matches for that data set. So just to tighten up, in terms of controlling for various things, this is a table of match outcomes. So we've got the match result, this home result effect, with all matches, first of all, adding in home season fixed effects, so home team interacted with season, adding in again the away season fixed effect. And so what you can see is that the effect does disappear if you throw in both home and away season fixed effects. It's still there, still negative, T of about 1. If you add in fixture fixed effects, so for team pairings, again, the effect is still there. And if we compare what we look at as a reduced sample, seasons where there were some closed-door matches, so that we're looking specifically at the variation within a season, within a team, then again, the effect goes down to about a T of 1. So it's the effect that we think is probably there, but it's not as robust as, for example, if I skip on, this is the goal scored effect, which also is not necessarily, once we control for team strengths, not necessarily strong. If we skip past in the interests of time, past the yellow card effects for the home team, and red for that matter because there's nothing there, this is the away discipline set of results, if you like. So again, yellow cards, where I said that there's this largest effect. For all matches, again, and then we can think about just UEFA matches, just matches in Italy, or just elite level matches. For all matches, if we had an away team season fixed effects, the effect is about half a yellow card. Add in the home season fixed effects as well, it goes down to about 0.4 of a yellow card, so not a dramatic difference. The fixed effects for fixtures, adding in referees, and a Poisson regression, meaning that the interpretation of the coefficient is slightly different, but it's still, however we look at it, highly significant. And other small effects on red cards and second yellow cards, but by some distance, the most robust effect is on away yellow cards. So away teams get about a half a yellow card less when they're playing behind closed doors, we've found. Hang on a minute. There. Okay. So I presented that slide twice, so that's why I'm getting a bit confused. So to wrap up, football without crowds is different. The home advantage does appear to be reduced, and we thought that before the Bundesliga returned. That certainly seems to be, at least on the basis of 3 more game rounds so far, confirmed. What do we find in terms of that? Well, we saw that the home teams win a bit less. That's kind of distributed between the draw and the away win, so those two effects aren't necessarily significant. And there's an effect on the home team goals being scored. There's a yellow card mechanism, but again, we can't really, unless we know a bit more about what the yellow cards are given for, identify that to be a referee effect or a player effect. There's a shots saved effect we just looked at, so that's obviously we can think about that as players, but is that the goalkeeper suddenly performing better? Or is it somehow shots are different because we're behind closed doors? and maybe players try from further out because they're playing behind closed doors. These are all things that we can't really say anything on as yet. There's an insignificant injury time effect. There's also something that we didn't report, which was a penalty kick effect. I haven't looked yet at what the stats are, and those more familiar with who've been watching more closely the Bundesliga since it returned might be able to tell me. But before the return of football, there hadn't been a single penalty ever missed by an away player in a closed-door match. There have been 6, but there have been 6 penalties given in these closed-door matches historically. And according to our data set, none had ever been missed. So there's some kind of penalty kick effect potentially as well. With all these things, apart from the yellow card effect, really, we're not. We're looking forward to analysing with the additional matches that are taking place, because that's going to give us a more significant sample in which to hopefully start to make a bit more of a solid statement about the effect of these closed-door matches. But that's where we've got to so far, and so I'll stop there and take questions.
Yes, please. Somebody goes ahead.
James, that's really interesting. Some good stuff there. Can you control for the identity of the referees at all? For fussy referees who send players off a lot. I was struck this week by the Hoffenheim-Cologne game where there were 2 sendings off, and I thought those were rather fussy sendings off. Is that sort of thing present at all in your data?
Yeah, so we've got referee fixed effects in the yellow card, red card regressions, so we can do that because we have that in the data set.
Okay.
I mean, of course, I guess referees might, I don't know whether referees might behave differently, but then I guess with a referee fixed effect, you are then looking at how they would behave differently if they were in closed doors versus not in closed door environments.
James, what about ball possession in terms of teams that retain control of the game more often now without the crowds? Are you able to measure this, or do you even have this within your data set by now?
We have that with the data set. We haven't yet looked at it, but that's the data set which has only got fewer matches prior to the suspension. So it's something we want to look at because, as you say, you imagine ball tension is different and there's less pressure from the fans potentially. You expect there to be an influence on that, and the pattern of possession is a fairly solid indicator of other effects that may well have changed. So very much agree. Thank you for that, and we're looking at that.
Sorry, I have a quick question. I think you said it, but maybe I missed it. So what were the reasons why these matches are played behind closed doors?
I didn't say it, so good question. So in Italy, it seems to often be because of issues of hooliganism and violence. And again, others might be able to better speak into this than me. And then there has also been some matches. So, for example, England played in Croatia a year or 2 ago in a game that was behind closed doors because of racist abuse by Croatian fans in previous matches. And so it's usually some kind of punishment for teams involved. Obviously, with the coronavirus matches, it's different since it's not some kind of punishment directed at any particular set of fans. So it may be, there may be an argument that these are different kinds of closed-door matches, especially with the tightness of the control around the players. Only 322 people in the stadium, that kind of thing. But at least so far, we're not really thinking necessarily about whether the reasoning for the match being without spectators. We're not taking advantage of any variation in that, if you like.
Yeah, because in the past that was more like an exogenous shock. It's not like right now everybody knows, it's a common knowledge that it has to be.
Yeah, I mean, I guess players certainly would have known that their game was about to be played behind closed doors, I presume, back then, because it would have been announced as some kind of punishment. But as you say, it's a punishment for the fans rather than for the players and everything that they happen to be doing.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions? No, that's interesting. Like because of the fact that like the fans, of course, they always have the perceptions that they are able to influence a game, and perhaps they are able to influence the referees with respect to yellow cards for the opponent team. Yes, maybe, but everything else looks like as if the spectator is not able to influence like the outcome of a football match. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that we're looking forward to obviously investigating more of the data. There was an article in today's or yesterday's Daily Telegraph here in England or in the UK, which has apparently done some analysis of possession. I haven't been able to actually read it, but things like the shots on target being saved, that does indicate there's something about players being influenced. And you can imagine that, if nothing else, it's the noise. The noise effect might be different. So again, then you've got these different Bundesliga matches where there's noise being piped in, right? The Dortmund Munich game had the noise being piped in, as I understand. And then you have these games in Denmark where there's a kind of a Zoom call and people are on a Zoom wall by the side of the pitch. There's these different kinds of initiatives. And maybe they'll make a difference. They'll give us a little bit more variation. I don't know. But I think even the piped-in sound isn't going to, make any kind of nearly significant effect in the same way that the fans would actually make in a large stadium environment. But yeah, we're looking forward to learning a bit more. Really, I think as more data comes in.
Yes, this would be interesting. Like when there is a foul and then piped in to influence the referee. This could be interesting. Like that's a very good idea. Yes.
Well, this is what I was thinking because, the crowd noise obviously changes relative to where you are on the pitch. I mean, are they analysing crowd level noises relative to when the home team's attacking, or when there's a foul, like you say? When there's a handball, do you get the crowd shouting in unison, handball? All these kinds of things. I mean, I guess it all depends when we go faster to whether we end up with these kinds of developments.
Okay. Now then, thank you very much, James.
Thank you.
Like we are at the end of our conference, and I think it was a very interesting conference.